Here's the first of two appearances by our NHL analyst, Frankie Corrado, looking fantastic at home in a suit. Brad Treliving, Frankie, said that he spoke to 9 different candidates about this Leafs head coaching job. Love to know who the other 8 were, but let's just focus on the guy who got hired. After hearing what he had to say on Tuesday morning, do you think Treliving made the right choice?
Yeah, I mean, we'll ultimately see when the team gets on the ice and how they play. And even the regular season, Jay, you're not going to judge the team by how they perform in the regular season. They've been a very good regular season team for a long time. This team is going to be judged on, do they get over the hump in the playoffs, and do they look different come playoff time? And, I think when you're looking to evaluate what your team needs in a coach, on paper, there's a few things that you need to check off specific to your group. And it looks like Craig Berube checks a lot of those boxes off for what this group needs. They need a strong communicator. They need someone who's going to hold players accountable. They need someone who's going to find a way to get the most out of those players. It's not going to be so much about X's and O's, but it's going to be more about bringing this group together and making sure it's not a core 4, but it's a collective team. And that's going to be so important for the Maple Leafs and Berube and how they approach things going forward. It sounds like he hits a lot of that criteria. So yes, Jay, on paper, it looks like a good hiring.
You brought up something that I want to touch on again. You said it's not about the core 4, it's about the collective team. And we heard Berube emphasize that over and over on Tuesday morning. But do you think this type of team could follow a philosophy like that next season, go away from the core, move to a 4-line team like the Dallas Stars are?
They would have to. Look at all the teams that have success. They're deep teams. They're not driven by 4 or 5 players. And, the way the team is currently constructed would lead you to believe that there's going to have to be some heavy lifting done as far as making a group that reflects that isn't just 4 guys deep, and that is maybe a little more of a deeper team, more pieces on the back end, a goaltender. This is the first of probably quite a few moves that need to be made within this group. But you watch the playoffs year after year, you see the teams that have success. Yes, star power drives the engine, but there's a lot of players lower in the lineup that can win you a matchup, that can win shifts in a game, that can be big-time players in a playoff series. And the Leafs have lacked that in the past because of the way the money's been allocated, with all the money going to those 4 or 5 players. So if you want to be a 4-line team, if you want to have contributions from players lower in the lineup, your structure of your cap and your roster is going to have to reflect that, or else those are just empty words.
And, the way the team is currently constructed, Craig Berube played over 1,000 games in the NHL, Frankie, and he played heavy. He wants his teams to play heavy. As the team is currently constructed, can they play that heavy style that Berube demands?
They're going to have to bring in players that play that way. You can't fit a square peg into a round hole. You're going to have to bring in players that reflect how you want to play. Jay, when I was in the league, the LA Kings, they were a heavy team because they had heavy players. You look at those guys, they were all way over 6 feet. They were all 200 pounds. It was like they had a prerequisite to play against that team, and they were so difficult to play against. The Chicago Blackhawks were a highly skilled, very balanced team when they were winning their Stanley Cups. You can kind of tell based on the composition of the roster what you're going to get out of each group. And right now, the way the Leafs are constructed, the star players really have to lead the way, and they have to be dynamite offensively. And if that doesn't happen, it feels like there's no other identity that this team can latch onto. So if you want to play heavy, the first thing you're going to have to do is players that are heavy and can play heavy and play the system or the style that the new coach wants to play.
Okay, so first order of business for Brad Treliving, of course, now that he's got his head coach. If they're going to play that style, is it a matter of potentially dealing one of the core 4, core 5 in a trade that maybe on paper looks like the Leafs lose the trade, but in the end the Leafs do get heavier and do have a more balanced team going into the next season?
I mean, sure. In a perfect world, if you could make that kind of trade and alleviate some salary cap space from one player, spread it around to multiple players who now fit exactly what you want to do and what you want to become as a team, that would be great. That would be a home run. But I'm not sure like, do they want to make a trade like that and lose the trade and then wonder, okay, what could have been? Because now, like last year, Treliving comes in, it's like a little bit of a, I want to see what the team has with my own eye from the inside. Does the coach have to do that now as well? Because it's a new coach. Like, do they refrain from making that big trade until Berube gets to see how the core four interacts and how they play and all that kind of stuff? Like, it seems like there may be an evaluation period. And if I was the coach, I'll be honest with you, Jay, like, I never coached. Let's get that very clear. But if I was stepping into that situation, I kind of would want a little bit of an evaluation period to see, like, okay, what do I actually have here? What are you actually trading? And maybe can I work with what you currently have before we do something drastic? Like, that might actually be the reality of the situation, as much as Leafs fans and, you know, people who follow the team may want there to be a significant move made. But I think the evaluation continues until you know exactly what you have and how you can have the players on your roster reflect the type of game that you want your team to play.
I guess worst case scenario, Berube suits up on the fourth line. Hang tight, Frankie, because later in the show, I'm going to ask you all about Thursday night's Game 1 of the Western Conference Final between the Oilers and Dallas Stars. That's later on SportsCenter.